The day my brother disappeared, he left behind only a single note. Take care of yourself. One day you'll understand. I was 16 years old when I found that piece of paper on my bedroom desk. At the time, those words felt like a betrayal. My brother Ethan had been my best friend, my protector, and the one person who always stood by my side. Then, without warning, he was gone. For years, I hated him for it. But I never knew the truth. And when I finally learned why he left, it changed everything I thought I knew about family, sacrifice, and the bond between siblings. Ethan was 7 years older than me. Growing up, we were inseparable despite the age difference. Our parents worked long hours, so Ethan practically helped raise me. He walked me to school, helped me with homework, taught me how to ride a bike, and protected me from every bully who crossed my path. Whenever I was afraid of thunderstorms, he would sit beside my bed and tell funny stories until I fell asleep. To me, Ethan wasn't just a brother, he was my hero. Our family wasn't rich. We lived in a small house on the edge of town, and money was always tight. My father worked long shifts at a warehouse, and my mother cleaned office buildings at night. We struggled, but we got by. Then, when I was 10 years old, everything changed. My father suffered a serious injury at work that left him unable to continue his job. Suddenly, medical bills began piling up. Debt followed, and stress took over our home. I was too young to fully understand what was happening, but Ethan understood everything. While other teenagers worried about sports, parties, and college applications, Ethan worried about keeping our family together. At 17, Ethan started working every spare hour he could find. He stocked shelves at grocery stores, mowed lawns, delivered newspapers, and accepted every odd job available. I often wondered why he always looked exhausted, but I never asked. One evening, I overheard my parents arguing quietly in the kitchen. My mother was crying as she talked about unpaid bills. My father sounded defeated. That night, Ethan sat beside me on the porch and told me everything would be okay. I believed him because I always believed him. Things didn't improve right away. In fact, they became worse. The bank threatened to take our house. Collection agencies called constantly, and the tension inside our home grew heavier each day. Then Ethan graduated from high school. He had been accepted into a great university and had a bright future ahead of him. Everyone expected him to leave for college. Instead, he took a full-time job at a manufacturing plant. When I asked him why, he smiled and said college could wait. At the time, I believed him. Years later, I realized the truth. College wasn't waiting. He was sacrificing it for us. For the next several years, Ethan worked harder than anyone I have ever known. Every paycheck went toward household bills, groceries, mortgage payments, and medical expenses. Slowly, our family's situation improved. The foreclosure threats disappeared, the lights stayed on, and life finally began to feel stable again. Then, just when everything seemed normal, Ethan vanished. I came home from school one afternoon and found my parents sitting silently at the kitchen table. My mother's eyes were red from crying, and my father's face looked pale. When I asked where Ethan was, nobody answered immediately. Finally, my father handed me a note. It was the same note I had found in my room. There was no explanation, no goodbye, and no clue where he had gone. Weeks passed, then months, then years. Ethan never called, never visited, and never contacted us. The sadness I felt slowly transformed into anger. I convinced myself that he had abandoned us. Whenever someone mentioned his name, I changed the subject. Whenever I saw old photographs, I looked away. The brother I once admired became the person I resented most. Life moved forward. I graduated from high school, attended college, started a career, and moved to another city. My parents grew older, and Ethan became nothing more than a painful memory nobody wanted to discuss. Then one rainy Saturday morning, everything changed. My mother called me and said she had found something while cleaning the attic. A few hours later, I arrived at my parents' house. She handed me a worn cardboard box with my name written across the top. Inside were dozens of letters. Every one of them had been written by Ethan and addressed to me. My hands trembled as I opened the first letter. The date shocked me. It had been written nearly 12 years earlier. The letter began simply, "If you're reading this, it means Mom finally found the box." As I continued reading, the truth slowly unfolded. Years before Ethan disappeared, he had secretly been diagnosed with a rare heart condition. At first, doctors believed treatment could help, but over time, the condition worsened. Eventually, he was told he would need an expensive surgery that our family could never afford. Instead of telling us, Ethan kept the diagnosis a secret. He continued working, continued helping our family, continued pretending everything was fine. The letters described hospital visits nobody knew about, physical pain he hid behind smiles, and fear he carried completely alone. Then I reached the letter explaining why he left. His condition had progressed much faster than expected. A specialist in another state offered treatment, but it required him to relocate immediately. Ethan didn't want our family drowning in medical debt. He didn't want us spending our lives worrying about him. Most importantly, he didn't want me sacrificing my future to help him, so he left. The note he left behind was never meant to hurt us. It was his final act of sacrifice. In the last letter, he wrote words I will never forget. He said he knew I would probably hate him for leaving. He admitted he wished things had been different, but he believed leaving was the only way to protect the people he loved. He wanted me to have opportunities. He wanted Mom and Dad to find peace, and he wanted us to live without the burden of his illness. Tears blurred my vision as I finished reading. For years, I had judged him without knowing the truth. For years, I had carried anger toward the person who had sacrificed the most for our family. Then I found something else inside the box. It was an address, a recent address. The very next morning, I got into my car and drove 6 hours. My heart pounded the entire journey. Part of me feared I was too late. Part of me feared he wouldn't want to see me. When I finally arrived, I found a small house near a quiet lake. I stood outside the front door for several minutes before gathering the courage to knock. The door opened, and there he was. Older, thinner, a few gray hairs, but unmistakably Ethan. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he smiled and said, "Hey, little brother." That was all it took. Every year of anger disappeared instantly. I hugged him tighter than I had ever hugged anyone in my life. Neither of us cared about the tears. We simply stood there, holding on to each other after more than a decade apart. Inside the house, we talked for hours. Ethan explained everything. The treatment had worked better than expected. His health wasn't perfect, but he was alive. He admitted that he had wanted to contact us many times over the years, but shame and guilt had stopped him. He believed we were better off without him. He couldn't have been more wrong. Before I left, I asked him if he regretted any of it. Ethan looked out the window for a long moment before smiling. "No," he said quietly, "because you got the life I wanted you to have." Today, Ethan is back in our lives. He attends family dinners, spoils his nieces and nephews, and argues with our father about sports just like he used to. Every Christmas, he sits in the same chair he sat in when we were children. Sometimes, I catch myself watching him and remembering how close I came to losing him forever. The bond between siblings is not about never fighting or never making mistakes. It is built on something much deeper: loyalty, forgiveness, sacrifice, and love. For years, I believed my brother had abandoned me. The truth was exactly the opposite. He had sacrificed his dreams, his future, and even his place in the family to protect the people he loved. And that taught me something I will never forget. A sibling is not just someone who shares your childhood memories. A sibling is someone who carries a piece of your heart wherever they go. No matter how many years pass, no matter how far apart life takes you, and no matter how many misunderstandings stand between you, true family bonds never disappear. They wait patiently until the day they are strong enough to bring you home. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who has a special bond with their brother or sister. Have you ever had a sibling who stood by you through life's toughest moments? Tell us your story in the comments below. Family isn't always perfect, but the love between siblings can overcome even the greatest distances. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.